mute us off. And we're going to go in 3, 2, 1, and...
Hi, Steve Gillmor here. This is the Gillmor Gang. So, so let's see who's here today so far.
Everybody.
Well, Brent Leary's not here.
Well,
he's got his new iPhone being
right
configured.
Now. He's coming in right now.
Who says that?
He's right here. Right there.
Oh, good timing.
We make magic happen here.
Yeah, nice. Ooh. What is that, a 12?
14?
That's a 13 Pro Max.
Pro Max. I used to be a member of that organization. As a matter of fact, I used to take that stuff.
Okay.
The second joke was better than the first, Frank.
Oh yeah, I know. It struck me just as it was coming out.
As the actress said to the bishop.
Yeah.
I think it should have been struck before it came out, Frank. But yeah,
we'll be right back to the sneak peek reject file after this important time out.
I hope that's the lower third. It struck me just as it was coming out, just as Frank says it.
It's going to be one of those days.
Hello, boys.
Okay, here's my job is now to say welcome to Denis Pombriant.
Okay, hi, I'm here. Good to see you, Steve.
Frank Radice, welcome.
Hi, Steve. Guys, how are you?
All right.
I'm in New York, by the
Michael
way.
Markman.
I'm in New York.
Yeah, I know.
How do you do? From
I'm
the
not doing
Pacific
that.
Northwest. Greeting.
Thank you, Michael. Keith Teare.
It is a great pleasure to be here on this fine Friday with the leaves dropping off my trees and my gardener waving at me.
And Brent Leary. Welcome, Brent.
I'm going to wave at Keith's leaves. I don't know if they can see me, but that's the spirit of the thing.
Okay, so we're going to lay the lower thirds in later in context. And can I get a URL for the back channel, please, Keith?
T.me/Gillmor gang. But you know, I had a confidence panic this week saying to myself, is that the URL for the one that nobody can see, or is that the URL for the one that everyone can see? So I'm just going to double check. T.me/Gillmor gang is actually our private back channel. So
nice.
For the first time ever.
Perfect.
T.me/GGX chat is the place where you can contribute. If you want to contribute.
No. That's not what.
Doesn't sound as good.
I have to do a restart, by the way. I guess so. All right. So could you give me the T.me/Gillmor gang, please?
The official channel.
Whatever it is that you've been saying for a year.
T.me/Gillmor gang.
Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to start off with a little monologue here, which is that I had a very, very exciting experience yesterday, which was the day before today. And on that experience, there's a journalist / provocateur named Kara Swisher, who has turned into an incredibly talented. I think she's going to take over from Rachel Maddow when Rachel goes to. That's a scoop, by the way. It's totally factless, but she's terrific, and she's doing a Twitter Spaces with Casey Newton, maybe, who's I guess you'd call him a Substacker, a newsletter brand. He used to, I think he still writes for Verge as well. I'm not sure. Keith, do you know? You're muted, Keith, but thanks.
I think he just does his newsletter now.
Yes, but I've seen them multi-purpose. It's a lot like Scott Galloway, who wrote something for the New York magazine, and then basically wrote an update of it for his blog or whatever, where he quoted liberally from his first story. So this is a new kind of publishing model. So in any case, Twitter Spaces Kara's been doing these shows with Casey, and she invited on Ben Smith, who is one of the most talented media analysts that I've seen. He writes for the New York Times. He has a column there, and he's terrific. And so this thing, I came into it maybe 30 minutes in, and immediately through some mechanism copied the URL and sent it to the twitter.me or the t.me/Gillmor Gang channel. And one of the reasons I did this was that it was being recorded, which is that feature that is really unleashing this entire next phase of the live audio verse, or whatever it is that we're going to call it tomorrow. And this conversation was just, everything that I might have been interested in hearing something about was brought up. And when I was done, when the show was over, I clicked on the link in the Telegram feed, and because it was recorded, it comes up and you can listen to which I did, the first part that I had missed. This is a complete, wide open media channel that is going to dominate both social and mainstream media. It's working now, and it's incredible. So I'm, whatever else we talk about or whatever else goes on with the former resident and the virus, this is a good day for all of us, I think.
Help me understand how this is different from podcasting.
It's not. It subsumes podcasting. Podcasting is, so 2019.
But it's the same thing.
Okay.
I don't understand the revolution.
The revolution is that anybody can show up and raise their hand and then be ignored by the hosts. You can't do that on podcasting.
Well, also,
but you can certainly you can ignore them.
A call-in radio show is not the same thing as a tape recorder. That's the distinction. A tape recorder can record your voice.
You mean that it's live?
It's live and it has an audience.
Yeah, and it's interactive.
And it's recorded and can be played back later. So it's everything.
Yeah, that's a bunch of stuff, I think.
That's right. I mean, it subsumes one of the best podcasting plays, if you will, is the Anchor app. And this just basically takes the Anchor app and says to Spotify, who owns it, add this other thing, and you're still too late. It's Twitter and Clubhouse now. Maybe Facebook, but who cares?
All right.
Well, the only reason to care about Facebook is just volume. I think that they may be able to push a lot through a big, huge hose and with a lot of people.
No, you're missing, Frank. They're gonna put it inside that face mask and make it 3D.
Yeah, I read that's you laugh. There's a story. Why are you laughing? There is a story that's exactly what they're planning on doing.
Of course they are, but it isn't going to work, is it?
No, it's not.
No, it won't work. But that is
exactly Frank 0.
No. I agree with both of you. It's not going to work, but that is exactly what they're planning, and they had just announced that.
Okay, so let's talk about what
it's genius. I tell you, it's genius.
It's worth $1 billion.
In what? Bitcoin, right?
Depends on when you bought the Bitcoin, I think.
Okay. By the way, no, $1 billion is $1 billion no matter what it's in.
Yeah.
That's your theory.
Well, it's dollars.
It may turn out to be true, but
a dollar is a dollar.
99.
Keith, unless you're talking, Australian dollars or Canadian dollars, a dollar is a dollar.
Yeah. A dollar was a dollar on Monday on my stock account, but now a dollar is only 75 cents on my stock account.
Yeah, that sucks. And Bitcoin went down 5% yesterday. Where is it now?
Bitcoin's gone down way less than the stock market.
That's
Anyway,
an interesting way of changing the subject.
Anyway,
And I know this why, because I'm in the stock market.
don't get me started, please. Just
Well, it's been no. I mean, with the inflation numbers came out today. Actually the Dow and the S&P are up this week. But if you look at tech stocks, especially tech stocks in the earlier stage of their life as a company, they're down 20 to 30% on the week. I mean, a lot.
But isn't Apple way down right now?
No, Apple's at an all-time high now.
What about yesterday? They were talking yesterday about how down it was and how that affected institutional borrowing, institutional investors.
No, Apple's way up. It did go down about a week ago for a day, and then it went back up again. And that's because when it was announced that Tim Cook had done this deal in China, which the information claimed was a kind of a leak, but actually all it was Apple signed a deal with the Chinese government, promising that all the service would be in China and that they'd spend $275 billion over, I think it was a number of years, 5 years or something. All that was doing was telling the Chinese government what Apple spends every year in China and dividing it by 5. So it's a non-story. It was a total non-story. But Apple stock went back up on the news that it had cut a deal in China, which shows the stock market is smart about China. It knows you got to deal with it.
The stock market moves way too fast nowadays. It's crazy how quickly it reacts to things.
Yeah.
Thank God we're not doing anything about stocks. Because,
Okay, sorry.
yeah.
But Twitter stock, on the other hand, is doing quite well since Jack left.
Ah.
And he left. Where did he go? I think he went around the corner to the other building.
That's correct. To Block. It's called Block. He went around the block.
I thought he went to Square and then Square became Block.
Sounds like Hollywood.
Block is just a 3D square, isn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly.
But Twitter's up 7% this week. 7%, 7.5%. Not bad for a week. It's down today, but I agree with Steve that Twitter is consistently now and for about a year just nailing it on product when it comes to what is becoming known as the creator.
I think that's overstated. They're not nailing it, but they're doing something that would make sense as opposed to nothing that makes sense.
I realize I shouldn't use exuberant terms with Steve because
that's right.
He's not prone to exuberance.
No, I'm saving that for Omicron.
But Steve, it is interesting.
It's not Omicron. It's Omicron, not Omicron.
It's
I didn't say
Omicron.
I said Omicron.
No, it's Omicron. Dennis, am I right?
There are actually 3 competing pronunciations, all of which
Dennis
are recognized.
There we go.
Say it the way you want. You could even
Michael
do
Markman for the win. Okay.
But I like the fact
who saw? Hang on a second.
Wait, that's the title of the new Clive Cussler book.
Three competing
trying to head that
titles.
joke off before it was formed.
Yeah, but the Omicron variant.
The potato. What's the third one?
All right. Who saw Brian Williams' last show last night on MSNBC?
Great.
That's also Dave Garroway's last show. Peace.
I did not see it.
Well, it was excellent. Because he spent the whole hour fending off people telling him what a great guy he is. His sense of humor is paramount, but he doesn't know how to take a compliment like any of us do either. Except Brent. Brent, you're just doing fantastic.
You're a handsome young man, Brent, with a fine beard and a devastating look.
Yeah, you're the James Brown of all things digital. You are the hardest working man in show business.
That is true. So, Brent, I saw several of your shows this week. They were all uniformly informative and excellent. Starting with Bob Stutz, was that last week?
Yeah.
Who's now a member of your gang?
We saw it this week because it was recorded.
That's correct. Yeah, I mean, really, you can laugh, but I'm right.
Okay.
Okay. Just t.me/Gillmor gang.
Yeah.
Now, and the nice thing about the Twitter Spaces thing is I thought it was a bug, but I now realize it's a feature. Since it disappears after 30 days, if you don't watch it on the t.me/Gillmor gang feed, watch here, it's the same thing. This is a podcast. If you don't watch it, then it scrolls off, which gives you an incentive to pay attention, and then start to define what's useful and what isn't useful, and your viewing and educational and work experience and how that's rolled up increasingly in these new tools. I mean, this is a huge deal. I mean, I remember when podcasting started. Unfortunately, I was one of them.
They should introduce a clips feature, Steve. The way that Tina does sneak peeks. If they had a clips feature where the clips didn't disappear, and there was some archive that you could link to, that'd be better than the 30-day thing.
Like YouTube.
YouTube doesn't really do clips, does it?
No, but it does this thing where it must run some kind of algorithm against your video, because I've seen on a couple of mine where YouTube does this like 10 moments to check out thing, and it literally, you could click on one and it'll take you right to that moment. So it's not officially a sneak peek, but it does do something. And I don't know how it picks out these moments, but it's automatically picking out, X amount of pieces of that full-blown video that they have deemed to be worthy of people checking out.
I think tweet a clip would be a great feature. Like, you're listening, in the last 10 seconds, something was said, and you click, tweet a clip, and it takes that 10 seconds, and you can write a tweet about it, and it links to the thing.
That's a good idea.
That would be very
that
cool.
feature.
I think waiting a week as we do with the show is almost enough time.
Okay.
No, I'm serious. Figuring out what the rhythm of these things is, and what is the underlying message that you're trying to send, and what is the underlying message that is waiting to be received by people out here, trying to survive in this situation. I think that is not something that an algorithm is going to give us.
No, but I like Keith's idea because, we may look at this video and we can I bet each of us would pick out a couple of sneak peeks, and I almost guarantee that they're not all going to be the same. So whoever is watching is the one who makes, this is sneak peek worthy or not, to share with their audience of people. That's why I like Keith's idea. I think it's really great.
Mhm.
Well, I'm
I
thrilled.
just say that? Oh my God.
And I'm handsome.
Second hardest working man in show business.
Okay, Denis, what's on your mind?
Inflation. The numbers
And?
came out. The numbers came out today, and it appears that energy prices are having a lot to do with it. Not the only thing, but it occurred to me that energy prices are not heading down anytime soon, if ever again, unless there's some calamity.
What qualifies as a calamity? A worldwide
Pandemic?
virus? Yeah.
Yeah, another pandemic that shuts down
So-
the economy.
Are they going to go down because of the pandemic?
Well, they already did, and they bounced back up
Hmm.
energy prices. But
Yeah,
but
how much?
No, I want to hear what he was saying.
Well, I was going to ask him a question, but go ahead. I'll ask
The-
after you're done. Sorry.
the issue, I think, with energy, especially crude oil, is that as we deplete older, easier to find fields, and we're trying to backfill with fracked and ocean-based petroleum, those are a lot more expensive fields to produce from, and especially with fracking, you tend to be drilling holes for smaller reserves, and so as a consequence, you have to drill more holes more frequently, which adds to the cost of the product that you raise to the surface. So it does not look to me like energy prices are going to head south anytime soon, which is why I think one of the reasons why Ford and General Motors and Volkswagen and just about every car maker you can think of is introducing electric vehicles. It's not strictly for the environment, although I wish it was. But
When you say energy prices are not going down, are you including renewables? Because all I've been hearing for the past few years is that solar and wind are cheaper and cheaper and cheaper.
solar and wind and geothermal are cheaper than, are out competing on price, coal-fired power plants. And that's a trend that'll likely continue for some time. However, you have to keep in mind that the cost of a kilowatt hour, or the cost of any energy, is going to be related to its equivalent in the marketplace. So while you might see here's what I mean. The price of a barrel of oil is, I don't know, it's $60-$80 a barrel right now. That's a blended price. It includes the price of oil fields that have been drilled in the North Sea or in Saudi Arabia or the Middle East, West Texas. But it also includes much more expensive oil than those other places. And so you get a blended price. And if the more expensive oil can't reach its break-even point, say it costs the producer $70 a barrel, producer is going to shut down the well if the price of a benchmark crude oil gets below 70, for example. So you're going to be in this constant situation where the cost of energy keeps ratcheting up, and with that, the inflation rate.
If you drive.
So we should ignore
If you
the
fly.
recent drop. We should ignore the recent drop in crude and gasoline prices. It's just a blip.
I think so, yeah.
I think if you add to get that together with, and this is about inflation, what's going on in the auto market. It's interesting. I got a call from Mercedes this week, and I was looking at their new electric car called the EQS, and the dealership called me and said, you can buy it, but we've put a $30,000 dealer markup on it. I said, what? Now, when you start looking at go to any car dealership, there's now this markup. It's typically around $5,000 minimum, which is what they're charging because there's such a shortage of new cars that they're basically creating a bidding market where whoever wants to pay gets the car. And for the top of the range electric cars, in fact, only Tesla isn't doing this. You can go to Tesla's website and buy their top end Model S, now 30,000 cheaper than the top end Mercedes electric car because there's no markup. And,
Right.
And so it's all related to the supply chain of chips, but not just chips, shipping, everything. But basically, there are no new cars right now for sale in the entire US. And the ones that slip through, which is trickling through, get bid way up. So
That has to be temporary, doesn't it?
Yeah,
That's not a permanent state.
This is my point about inflation. Most of the
when
inflation.
Volkswagen introduced the new Beetle, it was the hottest car on the market, and all the dealers were charging a premium for them. And then eventually, everybody who wanted one had one, and that disappeared. And eventually, they discontinued the model because nobody wanted it.
Right. So, well, look what's happening to secondhand cars. You have to pay a 2-year-old car. You now pay more money than a new one. Even though it's got, 20, 30,000 miles on it, it costs more than a new one. And that's where a big part of the inflation is coming from, which does mean it isn't structural. Hopefully it's temporary, as you say.
Right. But the only thing I'd add to that is that buying a car is, for many people, maybe most people, a discretionary thing. Whereas buying fuel or buying food are things you got to do. You got to go into the market every day, and you got to pay what the market's demanding.
Mm-hmm.
There's one other thing about the price of gas, which is that it is publicly displayed on every street corner, so that even if you're not buying it, you notice it. Whereas the price of eggs is not visible unless you go shopping for eggs.
And even then, if you're me, you have no clue what you paid last week anyway. So or what you pay this week, because you don't look at the price.
George Bush.
Gallon of milk.
But
Yeah.
$37.
Now,
We'll
why
get
is
back to you on that.
37? Why did you pick 37? Because it is the funny number.
Yes, that's the only reason.
So the answer to why is yes.
That's why I picked it. It's the funny number.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I was going to ask though about funny business with OPEC, and there was some reports a couple of weeks ago that there was some funny business going on with manipulation of prices by OPEC. Would that have made any difference?
OPEC is known for manipulating all kinds of information. It's not just prices.
The definition of OPEC.
That's why it exists.
Manipulation of numbers.
It's reason for being.
I'm going to I can tell you a funny story about prices. This is a reminiscence, but it's little known fact that I stood as a member of Parliament in England in Oxford against the Conservative who was the Chancellor of the Exchequer in charge.
You're still doing that, aren't you?
No, but I stood and there was a public meeting with about 200 people in, where me and the Conservative and the Labour candidate were on a platform. I was the far left candidate. And at one point, the conversation came around to inflation and prices. And I said out loud, yes, I went to Tesco last week and I spent £250. And the whole room gasped, even the Conservative gasped. That was a lot of money to spend in those days.
Oh, yeah.
And I suddenly realized that I outed myself as being the wealthy guy who was on the left. And the whole room was like shocked that I would spend so much. And then I tried to recover and I said, well, it was a whole week shopping.
Nah. Look, Keith, if you became an MP, I wouldn't misspell your name.
No. Anyway, suffice to say, I didn't win.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Oliver Letwin was the guy I stood against. He became very senior in the government.
So finish your thought, Dennis, please.
I think inflation, maybe not at this level, but inflation is going to be with us for the foreseeable future.
Mm. That's sad.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting fact that might be true, because it's illogical when you look at it from the point of view of innovation and prices. Prices should always go down. And the only time they don't go down is when we mess things up. Supply chains or production or the weather, in the cases of food, when things get messed up. And what's messed up now is basically COVID. I don't know how the chip thing relates to COVID, by the way. If the chip thing isn't related to COVID, then I don't know how they undercalculated the demand so badly. It must be failure to produce due to COVID. But if it's all to do with COVID, then it's counter-cyclic. It's a contrary trend to what you would expect. So what do you think what's the underlying cause? Is it just COVID or what is it?
Well, Keith, one thing about what you just said strikes me a little funny is that prices always go down. You're talking about commoditization, and I agree with that. However, in our economy, we don't often let things commoditize. We supersede them. And I think one of the things you're seeing with the chip shortage is that the chips that we used 2 or 3 years ago aren't the chips that are going into new cars today. They design new chips the same way they design new bumpers.
There was a lot of production lockdown that contributed to the chip shortage.
Yeah.
I
You know,
mean,
you would think
it's still
any
the after
industry,
effects of COVID that we're suffering from.
any industry that requires you to don a complete clean suit and mask should have been immune to COVID, but for some reason it wasn't.
Well, because you don't live in that clean suit and mask. Eventually you have to take it off. And then if you get sick, you can't come back.
Well, I think demand at the retail end was very, very disrupted. Also, the thing we forget is that a year ago or 2 years ago, all of the car rental companies sold off their fleets and flooded the market with used cars. And now they have to rebuild those fleets, and that's putting really significant demand on the producers.
It's interesting.
Or they're going to buy the used cars back for more money than they sold them for.
It is interesting. During the
See how it comes full circle?
Buy high, sell low. That's my motto.
Sounds like crypto.
I was going to say, during the Second World War, it was a criminal offense to what was called price gouge. That is to say, when there's an issue that society is confronting collectively, and some people price gouge, especially when there's rationing and corruption comes in, it became a criminal offense. But in COVID, it's like these car dealers are getting away with crazy markups, and no one's saying anything.
It's true. That happens. That happens more frequently in cars than you think. Michael mentioned the VW, and that was certainly true. But I remember in like the 1980s, when everybody wanted to get rid of their Detroit-built V8-driven cars and buy Japanese rice burners. I know lots of dealers, including guys at like Honda and Toyota, that were charging premiums for their cars because they couldn't get enough cars.
Yeah.
So what I wonder, at a Uber level, pardon the expression, is how long are manufacturers and technologists going to misunderstand or not understand the depths of what COVID has brought in terms of touchless and stay at home, work at home, how long is it going to take before that's resolved into the economic system?
3 years.
And by that time, Meta will have actually figured it out.
37 months.
37, yes.
Why didn't I think of that? Yes, it's
Okay.
37.
Okay, I'll make it a poll since everybody thinks they're funny. Let's start with the poll question is, how long will it take for work from anywhere to become not the next normal, but the current normal? Starting with Denis.
It'll take 37 months because that's the average commercial real estate office space lease. And as those leases dry up, people are not renewing. And so then we're going to have a big overhang in commercial real estate and probably a commercial real estate induced recession.
Okay, that's so 3 years, basically. Michael Markman.
I have no idea.
Keep here.
It's above my page.
It's all above all our pay grades, but that doesn't.
Okay, then I'll go with that.
Okay, great.
I always follow the experts, those who
So
know.
I've been
But
doing
I
lots.
think we're going to find an equilibrium is struck. You know, it's going to be a new balance. The office won't disappear; it will shrink.
So the interesting thing is whether you answer the question based on the average or the median. I think if you answer the question based on the average,
your response. I just want a number. Thank you.
so I'm going to say I'm going to answer on the median, and so the answer is going to be never.
Okay. So not 3 years.
They're not going to. Most
Okay. So we have some
businesses are not going to evolve.
We have some conflict, which you enjoy so much on these programs. Brent.
Yeah, I have no idea whatsoever.
So you are you with what I heard Michael say, which is basically it's going to resolve into a it's going to resolve itself as the office shrinks and the ability to be able to project yourself digitally grows. Would you agree with that?
I just have no idea on that. I'll tell you what, I'm kind of, well, do you want to finish the poll? Because I don't want to go on a tangent.
No, that's all right. Go ahead. I'll get Frank. Frank can just jump in with a number.
12 months.
Okay, great.
And it'll be a hybrid. Thank you. I'm done.
Okay, go ahead, Brent. You were going to change.
Yeah,
it.
no, I've been looking at all this focus. What are they calling it? The Great Resignation or something like that, and how all the unemployment numbers seem to be really pointing in the right direction. And it seems like it's getting harder for companies to hire. And I think it's really some interesting stuff. And just looking at some of the things I'm seeing on YouTube, of all places, I always talk about, I look at all these reaction videos, but what I've been watching watching with these reaction videos, these folks are actually making this like real businesses. I mean, it starts off, kind of just them staring into a webcam with really bad audio, playing the video and reacting to it. But over time, like somebody that I saw only like 6 or 7 months ago with, I don't know, 100 followers. You look now, they've got like 10,000 or 20,000 followers. And it's not just them picking their own songs to react to. They're actually getting people to pay them $50, $60, $100 for them to request them react to a video that they want them to react to. I'm like, really? And then all of a sudden you start seeing them selling merchandise with some kind of made up, almost sort of like a little 6-year-old kid might have stenciled the logo, but they're putting that stenciled $6 logo on t-shirts and mugs and all sorts of stuff. So, and then their subscription numbers continue to grow. And so if you're working like a regular Joe, McDonald's 15 or probably more like $7 an hour job, and you get to the point where you've actually got enough people following you on YouTube for something you were doing for free anyway, and now you're able to monetize it, why the hell would you go and flip burgers? You've now found a way to monetize your passion, and you didn't really have to pay anything to get started. And then on the other, and added on top of that, you're doing it at your own house. So now you don't even have to pay, childcare for it. So why would you go work at a McDonald's for minimum wage when you can literally, in a matter of months, sit at your home, watch old videos? So you're not even creating any new content. You're just reacting to stuff that's already been there. And you got people paying you to do it. It's amazing what's going on here with this stuff. And
how many people are doing that? How many do you think are successfully doing that?
Well, I saw somebody shared with me a stat that says
37, Frank says.
1 million. If a person with 1 million subscribers is making on average $60,000 a year, but that's just advertising revenue. That's not people actually paying them to watch stuff. If you can get like 10,000 people subscribing to you, if you get like 1% of those folks to request a song at least once a month, that's not bad at all. And once again, compare it to flipping burgers, not compare it to somebody making a lot of money.
I'm going to get my numbers are I have 19,000 followers on Medium. I have about 5,000 subscribers on LinkedIn, subscribers to my newsletter, and I have 4,000 subscribers on Review. So if you add it all together, it's 30,000. And I'm making diddly squat. So I'm doing, obviously I'm doing something
I'm
wrong.
talking about YouTube. These folks.
Yes, but Keith's question is important. How far does that scale? Do you have 1,000 people doing that? Do you have 10,000 people doing that? Even if you have 100,000 people doing that, that's not the labor pool of the world.
I'm not talking about the world.
People doing that on YouTube
here in this country. That people are talking about the Great Resignation, and I'm feeling it's more of a great transition to being able to literally sit in your room and watch old videos and make a living. I'm not saying it's the greatest living, but it's compared to going out, having to work on somebody else's time in somebody else's store, taking somebody else's orders. If you're giving me the option of doing one or the other, I'm going to try that other one.
Oh, sure. And we know that young people aspire to be YouTube stars or YouTube creators.
Yeah.
But every branch of show business, there's a funnel or a pyramid, depending on which end you want to put up. And not everyone gets to make a living at it. Everybody would like to be a star. They don't all get to be stars.
I don't even know if
they don't even all get to be in the comfortable middle.
But a lot of these folks are looking at themselves as they've built their own little mini stardom. I mean, you should hear how these folks talk about. You should hear how they talk about their,
One at a time, please.
They talk about their fans. I mean, there's this couple, and there's a lot of couples doing this. These guys got 250,000 followers. All they do is literally record about 3 videos of songs that people suggested them, and they get paid $60 to $100 for requests. If you got a 250,000 subscriber number, even a 1% monetization of that subscriber list starts to become very serious money. I'm not even talking about the advertising dollars that Google pays, because that becomes secondary. They can put their own in there.
You bring up an interesting point there with that. As soon as they reach a certain point in their stardom, they're going to trigger a licensing issue, probably, just guessing, which is all of a sudden going to make what it is that they do more of a job than what it is they're doing right now.
So it's interesting.
Describe the licensing issue. Licensing in or licensing out?
No, if they're using music videos, for example, or they're watching movies and reacting to them, why wouldn't those movies or music videos be subject to licensing of a BMI or an ASCAP or whatever?
Well, they already are, and that's been in place for a while. You don't even have to get
I know,
but to do that. They're triggered algorithmically.
I understand that
the publishers get to either block it entirely or demonetize it, so that the ad revenue goes not to the person who's reacting on the video, but goes to the creator of the video.
Right. Yeah,
so that's happening now. It's not a
YouTube. So YouTube is brokering the payment of any licensing that might be on their platform done by a third party.
Yes, and that's been going on for a long time. It's the deal that YouTube made early on with the publishers when they were being sued. They said, "Look, we're going to cut you in on this," and the publishers said, "Okay."
I have actually still had things that I've published or that I've put up on YouTube stopped, and so I'm assuming then that those companies that are stopping it have determined that they're not a part of that scheme. I guess. I mean, I knew that there was. It
depends. It depends, because it's up to the owner of the copyright to determine what happens to the video that's using the copyright.
There's an
Or they can say, fine, show it, but we're taking the money.
There's an
Okay.
interesting thing when you're a fan. So I watched this YouTube show called The United Stand, and this guy has a million subscribers to his channel, and it's a Manchester United channel. Obviously, Manchester United is a brand and controls its image rights and everything. But this thing is called The United Stand, and it's a fan forum for Manchester United fans, leveraging the Manchester United brand. It does exactly what Brent said, which is there's super users who bid to have their questions read out live on the channel, and the bids go all the way up to like $50 for even beyond sometimes, from all over the world, by the way, in all kinds of currencies. And so these guys, when they're live, and they're live about 3 hours a day, every question that goes live on air, they're getting paid to ask that question. And that isn't leveraging a movie or a song. That's just a fan cult. And anyone could do that. You could be a Lady Gaga fan and probably play 30-second clips, and fair use would kick in. So it feels as if what Brent is saying is there's something new going on, and there's new businesses being built that wouldn't have been possible previously. I think Kara Swisher, even though she's probably not monetizing it directly through ticket sales, Kara Swisher's thing also prefigures that new businesses being built where ticket sales are viable, because I think ticket sales will be a thing. And the fact that the audience pays to be able to be visible is another interesting thing. So there is a lot going on, but it doesn't explain 2.5 million Americans quitting their jobs last month. They didn't all start.
No, of course not. I think the benefits, people are still receiving certain benefits around this, and if the Build Back Better kicks in, they'll get even more. So I mean, that's part of it. But I think because it's like almost like a decentralization of how you can make money. Traditionally, it's always been kind of the few that have pulled the levers, and everybody has to kind of jump through the hoops that they put through. But I mean, it's really interesting seeing these people use these platforms that were originally meant just for socializing for the most part. But because they're able to aggregate these huge audiences, I mean, 100,000 might not sound big from a networking, broadcast network perspective, but it's an individual that's able to put together a list of 100,000. Then all of a sudden, even if they are using, the content that was created and guarded against, to a certain extent, if they get to 100,000, they can even cut that off and start monetizing those folks in the ways that Frank was just talking about. And if you're able to do that, and more and more, not everybody can do it, but you're seeing a pretty significant number of people doing it. Then once again, why go out of my house? Why, work someplace where I really hate? Why have to pay childcare if I can actually make a living at home? Plus, I don't have to put any out for childcare.
I think you've got. I think you made a point of saying the word, which I think is critical and key to what you're talking about, and that's decentralized, which seems to be sort of permeating everything that's going on in our society today. But specifically on the internet, the ability to decentralize your own ability or anyone's own ability to do whatever it is that they want and monetize.
So
let me add this to what Brent has said. Even though the publisher might demonetize the ad revenue, the video creator still has plenty of other revenue channels. They can do brand deals where they promote and read an ad as part of the video. They can do merchandising. They can do Patreon. So even if you cut off the ad revenue, you're still able to make money from a video that incorporates somebody else's copyrighted material.
Guys, if everybody who was doing that successfully was not vaccinated, and then and then went out on the same day and got vaccinated, I'll bet you wouldn't be able to change the gross vaccination number in the country.
I don't
That's what a
understand.
small group it is.
He's talking about it being a tiny group. Yeah.
That's a tiny group.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's not the economy.
No, you're right, Dennis. But I think the only point worth making is it's a bigger group than it used to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, my only point would be that the Beatles started in a bar in Hamburg.
Okay, good point.
I thought it was a bar in Liverpool.
You know, when Brent was going through that whole discussion, what immediately came to my mind was Robin Bird and Joe Franklin. But that's just me.
I was just going to add.
It is just you because nobody knows who Robert.
Nobody knows who those or Joe Franklin.
Unfortunately, I know exactly who they are.
Before we change the subject, it's worth pointing out that Sam Lessin, who is Jessica Lessin's partner, the publisher of the information, he's a venture capitalist. He made his first investment last week in a person. He bought 30 years ownership in the rights of an individual creator for an investment. I don't know how much the investment was. I think it was about $1 million. And he bought 30% of her earnings over 30 years. And he made this strong pitch that it's now time for venture capitalists to start investing in individual creators.
This is what David Bowie innovated.
Yeah.
About 20 years ago, I guess it was, when he sold his Future catalog. And
well, that was David Bowie, though. I mean,
I know, but he then proceeded to to start a band with Soupy Sale's sons that went nowhere. So it was very progressive in terms of his understanding of something that didn't really exist at that point, which was the internet.
I want to say something that is, here's a sharp left turn. That Michael Nesmith just passed away. Yes. And honestly, there was a person that was he was at the forefront of what music videos eventually became.
He was the creative force of the Monkees because he actually wrote and performed the material, some of which was used by the group.
How old was he?
He was a musician before he was a monkey.
Yeah, they all ended up playing. I'm going to see how old he was. He was the one that's mother invented whiteout.
That's correct.
Is that right? Wow.
He could afford to sit in his room.
Yeah, he was 78 years old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so young. Guy's young.
How many of them are left?
I don't know. David Jones died a few years ago.
Yeah, Peter Tork died.
Peter Tork not long ago, right?
Circus Boy is still around. Circus Boy.
Oh, Mickey Dolenz.
Mickey Dolenz.
Dolenz, yeah.
Dolenz.
Please say Dolenz here, Keith.
Yeah, Dolenz. That's on you.
Here come the Monkees.
Look, if you want to shine a light on how badly you speak English, go ahead.
Well, you started it, and I buy that. The UK started it.
Wow, did that happen?
And by the way, one other thing, the UK has now got some kind of a deal with Lorne Michaels to try and do an SNL with British stars. Look, arguably, all of British comedy is like SNL, but it seems to me. But it seems to me that with Lorne Michaels doing it, that Comcast is dumping a shitload of money. Did that get blacked out? A whole lot of money, and that could make the difference because it is a kind of show that is different. And I don't know what in the UK is as sort of fast paced in a live format as SNL is. I mean, watching them work when I was there, watching them work live and moving the sets around while the show was on the air and in the midst of a live audience, spectacular stuff. And I have not seen anything like that. anywhere else.
The nearest in the UK is they have a weekly show. I think it's called Not the News or something.
Oh, not necessarily the news.
And it's run
Yeah.
by the guy who is the publisher of Private Eye magazine, which is kind of an anarchist, what was always perceived as a slightly anarchist, posh anarchist magazine, basically for public school boys and girls.
Posh Anarchist. Now there's a
And the,
good rock band name.
and
Yeah.
it,
I think a lot of us in the 60s were posh anarchists.
Well, speak for yourself.
Some ran for parliament.
Well,
Yeah, and some
check
ran
out
for
Private
Congress.
Eye magazine. It's your magazine if you're a posh anarchist. It's because it's too clever.
I remember it. The guy that was the publisher or the editor of that became pretty famous, and I just for the life of me can't remember what his name is.
Well,
it was a big deal here.
The editor has this show in England called Not the 9 o'clock News, I think it's called actually, or something like that. And it's very
Are all
funny.
the English titles like this? I mean, just so straightforward.
Yeah.
Well, you got Doctor Who. That's not very straightforward. That's a question or not.
See, I'm immune to this Doctor Who stuff. I've never seen
You
it.
don't. You
I
don't know
don't
what
give
you're
it, right?
Were the
It's
Beatles
so
ever on
good.
an episode of Doctor Who?
I've probably watched every episode ever.
I've watched none ever.
It's gotten so good. It's just so good. It really is. You need to watch
Oh, by
it.
the way, Schitt's Creek is fantastic.
Yeah, hilarious.
Who knew? It was certainly not me.
Dude,
I
Angela
was-
Levy is funny as hell. I mean,
Yeah, but I didn't know that.
I've never
And his
watched
kid,
it.
American Pie.
his son is hilarious too. That's his son who
Yeah.
plays the.
Yeah, and he doesn't look like, that's why I didn't like it. It was the Emmys. This guy's like, who is this guy? And then he was funny on some show. And so I rethought that. And then Tina just said, we're watching it.
well, we tried.
It's good.
How can you ignore a show with Catherine O'Hara?
Well, that's true. All of that's true, but nonetheless, Second City,
I've never watched it. Because of the title. I don't like the title.
I'm sure that turned a lot of people off, actually. But you have to see the sign of the city shits.
oh, no spoilers.
You have to.
Season.
Not going to explain it. Schitt's Creek. You have to see the sign as you drive into the city. It's pretty funny. It's pretty funny. I'm waiting for Michael to put it up as a freeze frame.
Nothing. I got nothing.
No, because I've got the mute button now.
Yeah, the video mute button. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. You want me to show you?
No, that's all right.
I didn't think you would.
That's all right.
If I put it up, we'd be demonetized. So
Those are the only two things I had to offer to this show.
So the decentralized theme from earlier, the big news
I
invention.
knew you were going to try and, decentralized is code for ain't going to happen.
Well, I don't know. Isn't that what the blockchain is? And isn't that what crypto is?
Uh-huh.
Isn't that what NFTs are? And
Yeah,
or is
all-
that it? NFTs is it is or are? I don't know.
The one thing that's going to make sure that, how do you compete with people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and what's that guy with the cars, Tesla?
Elon Musk.
How is decentralized, some mechanism not owned by anybody? How is it going to compete with?
They're not.
The odd thing is that all of these decentralized creators require platforms which are nearly at monopoly level. So
Centralized.
YouTube, owned by Google, owned by Alphabet, is hardly a decentralized small player in the world.
Yeah, but just to be serious for a second,
I was serious.
decentralized platforms don't sit on top of AWS or YouTube. So if something's sitting on top of those, it's not decentralized. Michael's right. So the latest is where somebody invents a protocol. What is a protocol? Well, it's what Tim Berners-Lee invented when the web grew up. A protocol is a piece of software that has a specific task, usually one task. someone invents a protocol, but instead of building a company, they make it open source and they build into it a reward system where anyone who throws up a server and runs a node gets rewarded if the node gets used. And so you get truly decentralized at the hardware level, the software level, and the monetization level. And there really genuinely is no centralization, except that the founders usually issue themselves some percentage of the tokens that are used for the reward system on day one. So if the network takes off, they get rich. So basically you've got to think of decentralized as being a new network architecture that's an extension of open source into protocols and hardware. And it looks very different to anything we've seen so far.
I still believe in the tooth fairy. That doesn't mean it's real.
Well, some of it's, you're right to say that it isn't real in the areas you just mentioned, but the areas where it's very real are financial services, where the middleman is generally frowned upon as just raking money for doing nothing. So that's where the most aggressive disruptions are happening. It's around financial services where you're killing the middleman by creating systems that don't need the middleman.
This
Alrighty then.
intermediation has been going on for decades.
Yeah.
One thing that strikes me about the kinds of people, I would call them yeomen, that Brent was bringing up is that this looks a lot like farming in the 19th century. Everybody got a piece of land and started farming and thought it was great, and their children realized how much work it was, how hard it was, and left the land and went to the city. This might just be a cyclical thing happening.
Well, you're missing a key part of that story, Denis, which is the Industrial Revolution that created cities and industries that gave an alternative way of making money. Well,
yes, that's assumed. And I think we have no shortage of things like that happening. Yeah. I think the tech revolution is ample example of that, although it's getting long in the tooth. I think it will be replaced by another kind of technology, another revolution.
Meta.
Well, when you look at that, if you look at technology from the human point of view, you have to start taking things like biotech really seriously now. And I think even quantum computing, which is really understanding how atoms work, all of this stuff's getting quite serious. And it's still pre-product, it's still R&D, a lot of it. But the vaccine is the productization of that. And so it's, in some cases, it's becoming productized and usable by humans. And I think, decentralization is an architecture. It's not a product. It's a way of doing something. It's not a thing in and of itself. It's a way of doing a thing. And I have a huge debate with myself. I've just created this startup that's centralized. And to be honest, I can already imagine how I could do it decentralized. And I chose not to. And I chose not to because I want to keep control of it. And I'm a bit old-fashioned in that way. But honestly, technically, I could have thought of a way of not being in control of it and still done well if it did well. So I think we're at that moment where the option to do things differently is there.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I just finished reading a book that is way too long about anthropology, and it deals mostly with prehistory. We understand the last 2,000 to 5,000 years pretty well of human history, but humans have been around for 200,000 years. So what did they do in all that time? And
which book?
Pardon me?
Which book did you read?
The Dawn of Everything.
Okay.
It was by a couple of PhD anthropologists, pretty serious stuff. But the point they make is that the path that we took since the Enlightenment and the development of capitalism is not preordained. It's not the only thing you can do. And for tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of years, humans got along just fine in a more decentralized hunter-gatherer approach And many civilizations actually tried farming and gave it up because it was
I read
too
a
labor
parallel
intensive.
book. I don't know if you've seen what's his name? Yuval Noah Harari's book,
Yes.
*Sapiens*, which he basically says, look, the hunter-gatherers had a much better lifestyle than the agricultural. You didn't have to spend as much time getting food.
Yeah.
You had much more leisure time in the hunter-gatherer world. You had much more autonomy.
Of course, there weren't 700 or 7
more
billion people on
opportunity
the
to be
planet
personally
either.
creative. In many ways, farming made life worse.
Yeah, but
Made
you
the
still need to
actual
eat your
lifestyle
greens.
worse.
You got to still eat your greens.
Well, that's where it's an interesting discussion, because it's where the point of view of the individual and the point of view of society diverge. And the minute you envision something on a grander scale called society, you have to have a division of labor. And a division of labor implies specialisms, and specialisms imply work and learning and education and blah, blah. So
but the drudgery of when you go past agriculture to the industrial area, the jobs that most people have, going into a factory and working the same machine for 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours a day, doing the same limited number of tasks. That's not very, very rewarding. And then you go home, you barely have time to cook and relax and go to sleep before you have to go back and serve that machine again.
it's still like that. My son has friends who work at Tesla, on the production line at Tesla, which is highly automated. The human tasks are very repetitive, and they quit. No one has the stamina to keep the job. These kids quit in less than a year.
To go do blogs.
But now,
Well, these authors would disagree with you. They actually make the point that specialization is not inevitable either.
Yeah, no, I don't think I agree that nothing's inevitable. Actually, I agree with that. But I think if you look at what Michael just described from the point of view of the end game, it's like if you're a super soccer player, you have to train hard. And if you don't train hard and get the physicality and the stamina, you can't play the game. The end game is to be good. Well, the end game of civilization is to have all your time back, because you've developed technology to the point where you don't have to work anymore. That's the whole point of everything, human-wise, where you get choice about how to spend your time. To Denis's point, you get choice in the day, or the hunter-gatherer choice, where that choice only comes through automation. And so human ability to have choice over time is directly related to innovation and technology. So if we give up on it, we give up on freedom.
Actually, I would disagree. In one really interesting point. Everything that you say is true if we all want to be rich. If on the other hand, if on the other hand we want to be poor, or decide that we want to be poor, and we'll go grab a salmon out of the stream, or we'll bag a deer or whatever, we have just about all our time back and our freedom.
Not for 9 billion people. Maybe
not for 7.5 billion people. You're right.
Well, it's going on to 9, but I mean, if you want to if you describe a world in which we lose 90% of the population, maybe that's sustainable, but not otherwise.
So,
well, I don't know. If Brent's right, then we're on our way to having 1 billion people blogging and posting, and
not everybody's going to do it. It's like everything else. And it's only going to be a relatively small percentage of folks who are going to be able to really make it big, like almost anything else. It's very proportional. Only a few get the riches, so to speak, but a lot of other people are going to try it because it's enticing. I mean, everybody wants to be a star, but not everybody can be. And I do think that it just provides a potential other avenue other than the traditional big companies give you these options. And if you don't like those options for whatever reason, you were kind of forced into doing it anyway. But as technology becomes more accessible to more and more people, that provides some of those people with the tools that will allow them to say, you know what, I don't like your options. I'm going to take advantage of what I can do and see if I can monetize it and come up with a door that might not have been available 20, 30 years ago.
I see a lot of that happening in places.
There's no question about that. There are paths for more people to do things that you call entertainment, or making shows, whether they're TikTok shows or YouTube shows. There are many, many more paths for people to do something that is sustainable. Can't argue with that.
Yeah, and most of that comes from there being two of, like Noah, two of everything. It unleashes what Brent is talking about, which is the choice between platforms. And that's the one thing that the centralizers can't control, particularly as we move more and more into an API-driven interlinking technology culture. Okay, I'm going to start to wind this down. Anybody have anything else that they wanted to talk about when they got up this morning?
Just another book recommendation. Steve Van Zandt's book, Unrequited Infatuations. First of all, he's just a guy you want to hang out with. He is funny. He is witty and sharp, and in many cases hilarious. But he has huge insights into the development of the culture that we all came up through, from what the Beatles did, how the Beatles did it, to what Springsteen did, how Springsteen did it, the role of the manager versus the artist. He points out that all of the A-list artists that we came to know and love happen to have A-list managers.
Yeah, John Landau, who was Springsteen's producer and manager, started as a writer for Rolling Stone, and he basically
he started for local papers before Rolling Stone. He was in the Boston Free Paper.
Well, actually, he started in a class that I invented called The History of Rock and Roll at Brandeis. But
I happened to be at a party in Boston with John Landau just before he went to manage Springsteen. He had just written the article that said he's rock and roll's future, and he had not yet hooked up with him, but he was. Van Zandt has a wonderful description of how the whole cadre of managers started out being very much like mobsters,
and DeLeo,
and then moved to the intellectual kind of John Landau.
Well, you mentioned earlier somebody did Lorne Michaels. He was really the first of these producer managers. He sort of accelerated something that a lot of people didn't see as being meaningful. And then once he had established the platform, then, he's still as strong. I mean, the guys are like 90 or something now. And well, I'm talking old, not these guys, not these little kids.
You know what, Steve, what he looked at stand-up as a road school for a big studio, and the studio was Broadway Video, which ended up feeding its people through into Saturday Night Live. He actually modernized a pretty old concept. I thought it's felt that way when you were around them and watched how they did what they did, and also how they came in and how they stayed, how the big stars stayed for a while, and then there was churn and for the other stars. I mean, it was pretty brilliant the way he did what he did.
What did he do
no
before SNL? What was his origin story?
No clue.
Because what he did wasn't simply stand up. He also drew on improv groups. on things like Second City, the
Yes.
Groundlings.
Yeah.
Second City.
Mostly that. Yeah, absolutely.
It was much-
But you know, a lot of those people were certainly already good stand-up artists as well. There's no doubt about it
No,
that
I
there
think
was a
that's
mix of.
overstated. I mean,
I think
our
improv
mutual
is
friend,
related to, and maybe
uh,
overlaps with stand-up, but it's not stand-up.
I
No.
agree with that. I
Right.
mean, our mutual friend Richard Belzer, Frank, wanted to be on that show, and there was a certain energy that I think he actually warmed up the audience for the first year. There was a distinction between the stand-up world,
Yeah.
and
So-
which
Well,
continued,
it-
I think, and through
I-
Seinfeld.
You're totally,
Robin Williams
absolutely.
is one
you're
of the few
abso-
people
you're-
who could do both.
Yeah,
who-
you're
who
100%
straddle
right,
those
but
roles.
he also treated those people, the groundlings and those improv groups as a way to bring people into the show. So it's the same concept. It was like a road team, actually.
So, the book you were talking about, Michael.
Let's see if it'll show up.
No,
Steve
you
Van
gotta-
Sant.
Okay,
It's
great.
called Unrequited Infatuation.
There was a great conversation between Brian Williams and Steve Van Zandt, since they're both from New Jersey, about a month ago, that illustrates what you're talking about.
Yeah, when the book first came out, he did the tour, and he was on a number of TV shows and podcasts. That's what got me interested in getting the book. I'm just to repeat. I endorse the book. Go get it, read it. You'll enjoy it.
So my wrap up is about. I finally finished the Get Back documentary.
You think you did?
Well, I finished what they published.
The Blu-ray is going to be 18 hours.
But what my wife said to me at one point, she's amazed how the lack of ego between them all, and how humble and no hubris. And if you contrast, the most famous people on earth being normal with what's going on TikTok and YouTube, where people are performing for the camera and hamming it up. The level of self-indulgence that we live through today is so extreme compared to the lack of it then. And Billy Preston, to me, captures it. Billy Preston walks in with a huge smile on his face on day one, and that smile never leaves him. He's amazed to be in the room, but he's Billy Preston already. He's somebody. And so that lack of self-awareness, the self-awareness about what you don't know, that most of the documentaries focused on figuring out what they don't know, not showing off what they do know. And it's just amazing how real the whole thing was. I think it's just such a privilege that we get to see that. It's just amazing.
One of the points that Stevie makes about the Beatles is that compared to most bands, they were we think about the Beatles as having broken up, but they actually were in existence for much longer than most bands ever managed to hold together. And for half of their time together, we didn't know them. Their pre-Brian Epstein world was the world that formed them, where they were working 7 days a week, doing 5 shows a night in clubs, and just learning, A, how to make music, B, how to make music together, C, how to blend their voices, and D, what worked with an audience. If you spend all of that time in front of an audience and you have to please that audience, the audience trains you. So by the time we found out about the Beatles, they were already incredibly accomplished, not just as musicians, but as a band and as performers and entertainers.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what was so fascinating about the rooftop concert is that, after all that bullshit, they had one day where they didn't let the cameras in, where they actually worked up the tracks that they were going to do. And, there's a noticeable difference between the sessions downstairs of that material and what they did on the roof. And they basically went out and they were in Hamburg again. There's somebody who's talked about this principle of you have to get up above 10,000 hours of anything in order to be
Malcolm Gladwell.
right. And unfortunately, he's probably right.
Yep.
But with the Beatles, it wasn't just 10,000 hours of playing their instruments or 10,000 hours of writing. It was 10,000 hours of performing. And that's what all came together. It interspersed throughout the whole Get Back video. You see John breaking into old songs. I mean, they knew everything. They knew all the history of rock and roll, and they knew all the history of Tin Pan Alley. It was all in their bones.
Between the two of them, I mean, Lennon hated all of the things that McCartney loved, and vice versa.
But they loved each other, and that was the most important thing.
Well, I thought that I was done with them, but I guess we're
What?
not.
Really? You really
Yeah.
thought you were done with the Beatles? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Steve, I think you're the only person on the planet who thought that.
Well, it's a comedy moment.
Even Mila knows that you'll never be done with the Beatles.
Okay, well, Prince Boy.
Princess Boy.
I'm not going to front. I know I'll never be done with it.
I don't think you can call someone Prince Boy in this day and age and get away with it, Steve.
Oh, when you're a venerable, like Steve, or
That's right.
Venerable.
That's why I get the big small bucks.
He's venerable and a curmudgeon.
No, with the thing that Genet said about
the
whatever,
lack of kind of
ego.
show offness.
Boy, I completely disagree, but I understand what she's saying. But I mean, I think these guys were the most ego-driven people on the planet.
Not with each other, though.
Yeah,
They didn't. Paul came across troubled a few times in the final episode, where you could tell he was the most scared of a Beatleless future of all of them. He didn't really. That was my interpretation, anyway, of his reflectiveness. But I think the genuine affection they had for each other and the normality of their relationship and the ordinariness of who they were as people contrasted with who they were as a band, that's real. I mean, that is real.
I mean, there is a balance. You don't go into performing if you don't have an ego. You don't stand up on a stage and ask people to pay money to see you.
Yeah, but
if you don't
ego
have
and
an ego.
arrogance are different. Like I've got a lot of ego, but I'm actually quite shy and insecure. And so arrogance is when you have no self-awareness. They weren't arrogant. They of course they have an ego, but they weren't arrogant. Their ego was the desire to be loved, not, hey, look at how great I am.
I don't know. George Harrison once, it's a paraphrase, but he basically said, "Oh, it was something I read yesterday." He basically said that being in the Beatles was really good for his, earning power. In other words, they were very, very aware of what they had created, and they were very reluctant to let go of it. But
There's no question
real
that
life.
money motivated them. I mean,
But it wasn't money.
What was the song
Power.
Taxman about? The
Well,
song
that's-
Taxman was about
They tried.
not being able to keep all the money they earned.
So who
Yeah.
played the guitar solo?
Yeah.
Who played the guitar solo?
8 days a week was about 7 days a week.
Who played the guitar solo on Taxman?
I don't remember.
George wrote it, didn't he?
George wrote it. He performed it, but the solo was by Paul McCartney.
Well, everyone hates the taxman, right? Even socialists hate the taxman personally.
All right. Who just turned their camera off?
No, he's back on.
Frank, he's back.
Frank is back.
Get back, actually.
Get back better. Yeah.
All right, last poll, and then we're out of here. Is the Get Better bill, whatever that is that going to be passed in 2021? I'll say no.
I'll say no too.
I'll say yes.
I'll say yes.
I'll say yes.
Ooh.
Okay, so it's 3-3.
Brent hasn't commented yet.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
Brent,
He's going to say maybe.
no, that's Brent.
So you're basically asking if Joe Manchin is going to be willing to pass it before the end of the year.
That's right.
And I'm going to say no, I don't think so.
Yes,
Hmm.
3-3. Okay.
Tina, tiebreak.
No.
Good. Half of us are wrong.
All right, Tina, go ahead.
No.
Break the tie. You're just going to make
I
it.
just said no.
It's not
Oh,
going to.
no. She
Oh,
means
good.
no.
4-3.
He operates on his own timeline. He doesn't care about other people. So
Well, I think
He doesn't care about his constituents.
the hurdle much higher than him. I mean, is it a simple majority in the Senate? And
Yes.
is it?
and then they have to go back to the House to.
Yeah,
And
but
can it
that's,
be
that's
can
a
it be
rubber stamp.
filibustered out?
It
They're
can't be filibustered. It's being done under reconciliation,
Yeah.
Okay.
which is.
But that requires all of the Democrats and plus the vice president to vote yes. So any one of the Democrats can hold
Yeah.
out.
Which augurs for the bill passing. The bill will pass. It just won't be before Christmas.
And have they got a timetable already that are they saying they want to pass it before Christmas, or is there no known time?
Yeah, no, the Schumer, who
Should
nobody.
want to pass it before. You never know, man. Somebody's health could go wrong. I mean, an accident, and they'd have no room for error there. So if they were smart, they would try to get it done as soon as possible.
Well, there you go. If they were smart.
I mean,
Oh, that's right.
I want them to do it so they can get onto the voting rights bills.
Oh, they can,
Sure.
if they do it in
Which are
December,
essential.
they can hide it in the holiday headlines.
2022.
Meanwhile, Omicron is devastating the UK, by the way, Frank. As you're
Yeah, but first of all, it's Omicron. But I have also heard, though, that it is treated by the vaccine, or not treated by the vaccine, but the vaccine apparently works on Omicron.
Not Pfizer, apparently. It gets
Pfizer, they said it did.
Yeah,
if you have the booster.
If you have the booster.
Well, I do.
You have the booster.
Yeah, if you define it as not going to the hospital and not
and it
dying,
works.
Yeah.
And it works. Yeah.
they're all working.
The Wall
Yeah,
Street
but
Journal this
the
morning has an
lockdown
article.
in the UK. It's pretty significant what's going on in terms of what they're doing in terms of travel, in terms of masking, in terms of shutting down. It's pretty significant stuff.
The Wall Street Journal has an article this morning that says the U.S. should look to what's happening in the UK as a preview for how Omicron will pass through the U.S.
And they might be right.
Yeah, you might be crazy.
Or you just might be a lunatic you're looking for.
Yeah. Thank you.
Name the artist, please, so that I can.
Joey Bill.
Over. Who?
Joey Bill.
Joey Bill.
He played the lounge in Vegas at the Flamingo, I think.
Who's Joey Bill?
Billy Joel.
Oh, Bill and Joey Bill. Okay.
It's time to end this.
Yeah.
It was.
So when you get to Joey Bill, it's time to go.
All right. I want to thank Denis Pombriant. Thank you, Denis.
Always a pleasure. See you next week.
Michael Markman.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Frank Radice.
Thanks a lot, guys. And Steve.
Brent.
And team.
Brent Leary.
Deuces.
Keith Teare.
it's such a good experience to be at the final scene with everyone still here.
Final
Exactly.
scene.
I
Oh,
want
okay.
to thank our producer. and
It's
director.
actually the final countdown, Brent.
I want to thank our producer and director, Tina Chase Gillmor.
Yay.
Oh, nice job, guys. I enjoyed it. It's
Rosie clap.
great show.
I want to say goodbye to a great man, Kim Cameron, who died last week. One of the Identity Gang, which was a group of technologists that laid some of the groundwork for everything that we're doing. He worked at Microsoft, and he was the first guy that I was amazed to see had a really great sense of humor at Microsoft. And that has spread outward to not only Microsoft, but a lot of the tech community as a result of his work. He's a dear friend of Doc Searles and many of the people that do a conference called the Internet Identity Workshop, and which is now in its 27th year or some crap like that. And it just goes to show you that somebody, as the resident said, 400-pound guy sitting on his bed can, really get a lot done in this world. Not that he was 400 pounds or sitting on his bed, but our ability to be able to work in a online culture has not been fully appreciated as what reality has become. So we'll hopefully we'll be able to keep that going as long as possible. Thanks again to everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Live long, prosper.
Calmaine.
Ciao.